The Dershow.
I have never seen a nothing burger story covered so extensively by the media, particularly by the left-wing media, as the Epstein story. Let's be clear, there's really nothing to the Epstein story. Epstein was a guy who cultivated lots of wealthy people. They didn't know anything about what he was doing on the side. He kept his private life very, very much apart from his public life. And I have seen no evidence that he ever trafficked anybody. What he was convicted of was what he pleaded guilty to was having sex with two women, one above age, one below age. The one that was below age was, I think, months before her 18th birthday. That's all he's ever been convicted of in court. Of course, the Miami Herald put a very irresponsible journalist on the case, and she claims to have spoken to dozens and dozens of other women who accused him and then came forward and brought lawsuits and collected lots and lots and lots of money. The only person that has seriously been accused of being trafficked to, basically, is Prince Andrew, and he's denied his guilt, although he settled the case. But I think Epstein was too selfish. He wanted these young women to himself, and probably had some kind of improper sexual contact with dozens and dozens of women, many of whom were already working in the sex industry before he hired them away from their jobs in what were called whack shacks in West Palm Beach, and offered them more money to do what they were doing there to him in his house. I have never seen any evidence of any trafficking to prominent people. There were accusations, but they've been disputed and they've never been proved. And as I said the other day, I've seen the accusations, I've seen the redacted FBI files, and none of the people who are accused are currently office holders or in prominent positions of authority. Some are dead, some are long retired. Remember, this all allegedly happened 25 years ago, 26 years ago, 27 years ago. So it's old news. But the Democrats, particularly the Democratic media, CNN, MSNBC, sees this as the biggest story of the century, and it just won't go away. And Donald Trump is absolutely correct when he says, "Why are people so focused on this guy, this creep, who's long been dead?" It's hard to understand. I wrote an op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal. It'll appear tomorrow. It's online now, in which I go through all of the allegations and, disprove them. There was no client list. There were no sex videos. He wasn't a member of the Mossad. He wasn't murdered. But conspiracy theorists won't go away. The one thing conspiracy theorists hate are irrefutable facts, and the irrefutable facts show that the conspiracy theories are just not valid, just not there. But there's a certain fascination with Jeffrey Epstein. Don't know why. I mean, he actually was a fascinating character, and things were written about him as a fascinating character even before he was accused. Where did he get all of his money? Well, he was dealing with very wealthy people, and they paid him, I think, 1% of what he invested, and he, invested it at 7 or 8%. So not a bad deal, and made him a very wealthy man. He was never a billionaire, but he was certainly worth several $100 million. And then he bought all these incredible real estates, the island, which he bought for a song, the house in New York, which apparently was given to him by Leslie Wexner. And that's a relationship that maybe ought to be explored. But Leslie Wexner is very old now and seemed senile when he was deposed. And then he had an apartment in Paris. I was never in the apartment in Paris. I was at his home in New York and at his home in Palm Beach. And my wife and daughter and I visited his island like months after he bought it, and it was totally desolate. Nobody was there, just us and another professor from Harvard, Michael Porter. We had dinner and we left. That was my sole contact with the island, but the island was worth a lot of money. He made very, very good investments. And he was probably worth several $100 million when he died. People want to look into that, that's fine. But this idea that there are prominent people out there, Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and other people who should be prosecuted on what? On the basis of allegations that were not proved? I'll give you an example. There's one woman, her name is Sarah Ransom, and she filed an affidavit in court, a sworn affidavit subject to perjury, in which she swore that she had evidence that both Bill and Hillary Clinton were pedophiles and had sex with young children, along with Richard Branson and some other people, prominent people. Big story, big story. This was in the run-up to the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton, pedophile. Then there was an investigation, and ultimately she had to admit, and she did, to the New Yorker magazine, you can check it out, that she made up the whole story out of whole cloth. She didn't ever have any evidence about any of these things. So, those are the kinds of things that appear in the case, these allegations. Some of the women were telling the truth, obviously, and they were paid off, but mostly what they were saying is they had improper sexual relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, not with other people. And so, as I said the other day, there is no client list. Jeffrey Epstein did not make a list. He didn't have a black book of people who he trafficked people to. No, of course he had an address book. I probably had 2 pages of he had every one of my addresses and phone numbers and contact information and cell phones. He had that with everybody. He had that with Bill Clinton. He had that with Donald Trump. The Donald Trump story is they were acquaintances, and Donald Trump did say that he was an interesting guy and he liked women on the young side, but there's no evidence that Donald Trump knew anything that untoward about Jeffrey Epstein. The young women were 24, 25, 26, 27. I don't know of anybody that I know of who ever saw Jeffrey Epstein with a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old. Obviously, I would have immediately reported it and would have never had any contact with him at all if I knew that that was the case. So none of us knew that. He kept his perverted private life completely separate from his very open public life.